Hello and welcome to Turkish Film's chess channel. This is daily chess analysis, day 2. I know it's a little bit late. I procrastinated for way too long today. So here is the game that I played today. And I did some analysis of this game. I didn't do as much as I'd like to. Tomorrow I will do a very good job. The first 2 days are going to be a little bit rocky, but beyond that it's okay. So this was a closed Sicilian position. E4 first move, and I played Sicilian, and knight c3. And I used to experiment playing e6, playing this. The issue with me playing knight c6 is I don't play knight c6 even in open Sicilians, because I play the Najdorf Sicilian, and my knight isn't actually always so happy on knight c6. So if they play knight c3 first, it kind of feels like a transposition tool to get me out of my regular theory. So I started playing a6. Right, very much in the Najdorf fashion, but also just stopping moves like this, potentially in the future preparing ideas like this to target the central pawn, but also just a lot of prophylaxis going on here. Okay, a4, not a great move, although he's trying to stop the b5 expansion, which I understand. And e6. I'm really a huge fan of this like bowl structure here. When your knight lands here, you're just protecting all these squares. It's actually very nice. I quite like it. You get a similar thing in the Bodler, and they actually also play a4 there. Okay, so f4, and I'd never faced this system before of closed Sicilian, a4, and f4, and it just felt, I don't want to say loose. It's not loose. It just feels like he's expanding on both sides, and he's kind of neglecting maybe a little bit of the center stuff. Although it's kind of hard for me to say because I've only made pawn moves so far. And that trend continues with d5. And he took, which was an inaccuracy, and I took back. I was actually looking, before I played d5, if this was a concern for me. And I thought that there's no way that this is bad for me because he's the one that released the tension in the center. So that's already a bad sign for him. But also, with the pawns locked like this, it's a little bit more difficult for him to throw his pawns at my king side. And so I thought this was actually going to be totally fine. Bishop e7. My knight can land here like it does in a lot of McDonald attacks, Grand Prix. And I thought that my central compensation would be totally sufficient. Okay. But like I said, he took and I took back. And I had to think, like, it's kind of crazy that I'm opening up my king in the opening, but he doesn't have any pieces to attack my king, and no checks matter here. And he played d4, and I briefly considered taking it, but I thought that was just gonna. Okay, this is kind of dumb now that I think about it, but I thought that's developing his queen. But obviously, I have knight c6 attacks in the end, so I didn't take it. I played knight f6, just defending my central pawn. Quite a foolish decision in hindsight. Definitely taking this pawn is the way to go. I'm getting rid of having to babysit this pawn. And I allow myself to play knight c6 later, attacking the queen when he has two defenders on the pawn. Okay, knight f3 developing. And I played knight c6. Again, here I didn't want to move this bishop, even though I want to castle, because I thought that the moment that I move it, he's going to take this pawn and I'll have to recapture, losing a tempo. A similar thing happens in the Queen's Gambit declined. Again, I didn't even really consider taking here, and I definitely should have. I just thought it gives me an isolated pawn. He's getting his pieces in the center. It looked really good for him. But again, you have to look more concretely than this, and there's lines that just work out really well. So I get this case of development, attacking his center, having pieces here. My bishop comes to an active square. It actually can choose either square. Castles, and even my bishop comes to a great diagonal and a lot of variations. And it's just very dynamic and very powerful. And it turns out that if this f pawn was back here and this a pawn was back here somewhere, and instead of these moves his bishops were out, it'd be a very different story. Maybe bishop there and queen there. He could queenside castle and go for some more traditional attack. Okay, but he played bishop e3, defending this pawn in the center that I just attacked. And here I played queen e7, pinning the bishop. Now, I thought this was a good move in the game. I wasn't thrilled that I was hurting my own bishop, but it's not often you get to attack a hanging piece while developing in the opening. And he has to be a little bit careful how he defends. And I talked about this in the game, but you can see some of the lines here that the computer gives. After queen d2, I bring my other piece out, bishop g4, attacking the knight. And he long castled. I didn't calculate if he had moved his knight because I thought that I'm just piercing kind of into his position. But this would be quite an imposing knight in the center, attacking my bishop, attacking my knight. And I said, okay, you're not going to stop me from giving you doubled pawns, so I'll take those doubled pawns. I thought this is great because any potential attacking power he'd have against me when I castle kingside is mitigated. I have all these pawns, quite advanced pawns actually, attacking his king, which is arguably somewhat open. And I thought here, these guys aren't going to do any severe damage to me. If the worst situation ever would be that I would play f6 and h6, giving myself light squared weaknesses, but stopping these pawns from ever attacking me. And here I made a severe strategical error. And the error revolves around this tension in the center. And now to my mind, I was worried that he was going to take here, and I couldn't really take back. I lose a pawn there. And I was concerned about taking. I still didn't want to take because he has so many pieces. He just gets developed to a really nice square. So in this position, I played c4, which to my mind was hurting this bishop a little bit more because now it can't live here. It was closing off any counterplay that he'd have with taking this pawn, and it's putting these pieces maybe in a little bit of an uncomfortable spot. They don't really have a lot of room to move, and this queen is even restricted somewhat. So I thought it was cramping him, and I was kind of prepared for when I castle kingside, I'll already have my pawns ready to throw at him. This is just the wrong idea overall. The idea the computer wants me to go for is castle queenside. And the reason's because while this is good with doubled pawns, it also opens up his lanes for attack against my king, his lines to my king. And bishop h3 is what he played, getting his bishop out. I blocked it off this way, so he brings it out this way. And I decided to get my bishop out in the game. Maybe to here. I hadn't decided yet. He played f5, and even when I saw f5 in the recording, you can hear me. I'm like, ugh, that move does not look good at all. Because while it does serve some purpose, right, maybe vacating the square for an attack, that's all it is, just a one-move attack. And it doesn't really help his plans, and it actually hurts the bishop that he just developed. So I wasn't a fan of that move, but my next move was, again, another strategic error. I played bishop to b4. Now, it makes sense from my perspective, right? I'm developing a piece, getting ready to castle, pinning a knight. Seems like really great stuff. There's just no threat here. Also, I've undefended this pawn, which creates a weakness here. And again, the computer wants me to castle queenside, not kingside. So my whole idea of trying to win this race was kind of flawed. He played rook h to e1, and I castled. And the computer's just like, this is so awful. And it loses just for tactical reasons. Bishop to h6, taking is basically suicide because he just lines everything up against me. Queen takes, forks these two things. It gets pretty bad pretty quick, and actually these double pawns ends up being an asset for him because moves like this end up being taken, and there's checks that come in, and the infiltration is just too heavy to deal with. So bishop h6 or castle's short, he's winning by 1.76. Castle's long, I'm winning by 1.9. It's actually kind of a funny situation. I've never seen something swing so far like that before. Yeah, basically his queenside's shattered, so there's no reason to deal with it. It's worse here. If we get to an endgame, I'm going to win on this side. So, time to focus on the king side. Get myself safe, get a rook defending this pawn. And bishop f4, trying to attack my queen. I thought bishop h6 too. I took bishop c3, and he just failed to see that I take the bishop with check at the end. And so I'm just up a piece here, and he resigned. So again, yesterday's game ended with a weird, sharp blunder all of a sudden, kind of an odd game. Here, the beginning of the game, as you can see, went quite well, was kind of fine. Mostly good moves, a few inaccurate moves. And in the end, move 13 and beyond was just all blunders and all mistakes. And it just goes to demonstrate the idea of understanding the strategic nature of the position. My main error, pushing here, and just relieving the tension in the center when it's unnecessary, and I can gain more things than doing this move. It just gives him some really nice outposts on these squares, which he can really just use and hammer me with. Also, castling kingside, kind of on autopilot. I didn't even think about castling queenside because my pawns were advanced. So trying to not just rely on these principles that we just always are thinking about, but actually ask, what does the position require tactically? What does the position require strategically? Noticing that, okay, sure, he has doubled pawns, but that means that he has open lines to my king. So putting myself on the open line where his rooks are glaring down is probably not the smartest thing to do. Those are the main mistakes that I had. Bishop b4 was another mistake. I should use the queen instead. But yeah, that's been this game. As you can see, the report is not flattering. He played 35.2%. I only played 78.5%. And I tried at 95. I can confidently say, yes, I'm happy with that. Things below that, I'm very much looking for what I can do better. And again, this opening is B23, the closed Sicilian. You can see the accuracy for each of the moves for each of us here. Pawn moves were fine. Knight moves, you can see there's a bit of an issue there. Basically no rook moves, so it's fine. Yeah, there's the game. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoy. And as always, you must remember, above all else, to stay Turkish. Good night.